Well, I definitely want to respect your time. Thank you guys so much for showing up. And we will just admit people as they roll in. I just want to introduce myself really quickly. My name is Elisa Kovach, and I own Alexandria Makers Market. And I'm actually joined today by Allie, who is the owner of Coots Creation and a few other creative businesses as well. And I'll let her kind of give you all the rundown about that. But just a little bit about me. I was a former teacher, so I'm super passionate about education. I started staying home when I had babies. I have 3 boys under the age of 6, so I'm just kind of right in the middle of all of that, raising kids. But I started another company, creative makerspace company, that really is hyper local. So some of you that were in the 3 o'clock session, you know, NASA was presenting, so we are the exact opposite of that. The things that I focus on are very hyper local, small businesses, home-based businesses, things like that. So if you're here and you're with a large company, that does not mean that you will not get something out of this. I think we're really going to focus on ways that small and large businesses can work together, ways communities and small businesses can work together, and just the benefits that we can have when we collaborate. And so I started my t-shirt company a few years ago, and it's a local t-shirt company, right? And through that, I started meeting all these other makers at local events, and the conversation always turned to, where can I find more events? Where can I find more opportunities? That is what I need most as a small business owner. And after about a year's worth of these conversations, it became obvious that we here in Alexandria specifically needed a space for creatives and makers to come together and for a way to showcase what we're working on a larger scale. And so that's what I started putting together. And it really started pretty small and organically. It started with people that I was already in contact with. And then, hi guys, for those just joining. And then I started to grow that in many ways, and I'll hit about that a little bit later. But before I get too much further, I do want Allie to jump in and to tell her, you guys, a little bit more about her and what she does. And we're just going to kind of jump back and forth. If you guys have questions, please feel free to hit them in the chat. We will do a question and answer at the end, or if it's something like super relevant in the moment, we'll address it then. But yeah, Allie, go ahead, jump in here.
Hi, thanks, Elisa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allie Coots. I am very excited to be a part of this panel. So thank you, Elisa, for asking me to join you today. As Elisa said, I'm the founder of Coots Creations LLC, and Coots Creations is really about making creativity accessible and affordable. And what I mean by that is it's providing marketing and marketing and branding services to small businesses and creatives and makers at an affordable price. So my goal is really to provide branding and product photography, as well as marketing products for small businesses and creatives, while also teaching them how they can use various resources and tools themselves so that they can learn how to do it on their own and won't necessarily need to hire someone to do that for them if they don't want to. So my goal is really to help small businesses be able to market themselves on their own. So there's a large education factor to what I do, and I also really focus on finding affordable and free resources that they can use as part of that education. I'm also creative myself, so I'm a photographer. I have a business called Faire Photography. I'm also an illustrator and writer, so I've done some freelance writing, and am opening a sticker shop soon. And so I've got products related to, that's kind of another aspect of Coots Creations. And I'm also the host of the Fun with Friends podcast. And that podcast is really about what happens when you stop overthinking everything and start doing. So it's really about putting yourself out there and exploring and trying new things. And I have bring my friends along with me. So it's always a fun adventure, and we're kind of working our way through our bucket lists together. And in my upcoming season 2, which drops on August 19th, I'm focusing more on small businesses and creatives and talking about how they got started and what their journey has been like, because for a lot of us, a really big bucket list item, I know personally for myself, has been starting a business of my own. And so I'll kind of be exploring that aspect of being, knocking things off of your bucket list and learning more about everyone's process of becoming a small business owner and being a maker. So that's a little bit about myself, and I'll be sharing a little bit more information about how small businesses can utilize social media and podcasting to kind of grow their customer base a little later on in today's panel. So I'll turn it back over to Elisa.
Thanks, friend. So all of you that are here, you've clearly been participating in this Maker Faire. So you're kind of either a maker yourself or you're just interested in this concept. And it took me a very long time to consider myself a maker. It wasn't really until I was into my t-shirt brand that I thought, okay, this is a maker profession. And sometimes when I think maker, I think high tech with lots of, the laser cutters and the 3D printers. But I have come to define maker as pretty much anybody that takes an original concept and then makes it happen. And whether you're using a ton of technology or whether it is more homegrown in those kind of crafts that we've kind of almost lost arts, the sewing and the needlepoint and things like that, whatever it might be, we cover everything with Alexandria Makers Market. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, I'm trying to really expand our concept of what is a maker. So for example, I reached out to Allie, she went for her podcast, and that was, that was me expanding my bubble of my definition. And so I really, the focal point of this is how do we grow and how do we bring in more people, kids and engineers and, those crafters that are just doing it because they want to do it. It's like their hobby. And I think that this is an arena that's really actually important right now because of what is happening, right? Everybody turned inside when the pandemic hit, and then all of a sudden people were taking up hobbies that they hadn't done in years, and this is where we step in. And like I said, I have a teaching background, so I'm super passionate about sharing expertise with a larger audience. And I think that as makers, we do have a role of bringing a wider audience alongside with us and saying, here's what we do, let me share this with you. And because when we come together and do that, our creativity, it expands the horizon, no matter what. If you're working with a novice, if you're working with a kid, if you're working with somebody who's seasoned professional, you're going to gain something from that just from working together, is what I feel and what I've experienced so far. And there's, a huge reason why we should be supporting makers in a pandemic like this. They're your neighbors, your friends, they're the small business down the street where like you grab your sandwich all the time. And so these are the people that we want to put money into their pockets, right? Jeff Bezos is great. He's a maker himself. He created this like just crazy monster of a company, but he's not who we need to be supporting right now. It is the smaller fish in the sea. And that's where I am passionate about providing platform and opportunity. And that's where these creative collaboratives really shine in a time like this, because when these smaller companies come together, it amplifies the voice, right? As my t-shirt brand by itself, I think I have a decent following and I certainly have loyal supporters and they do their best to organically spread the good news. But when I come together now with somebody who's in the podcast world and maybe a cake decorator and a candle maker and somebody who does blacksmithing, like all of a sudden, like that's an interesting group you've just put together. Tell me more about it, right? And so now we really have a conversation to be had. And and through that, we can spread our range way farther than if I was just trying to go on my own. And so with these smaller businesses, you know, we do kind of come together and really try to help one another out. But I'm going to talk more from like a customer side of things, or a big business kind of side of things. The way that we help these small businesses is by, you know, making sure that we continue to give them our business, right? Target and Amazon are great, but they're convenient, and we pay for that convenience. And this, you know, the slow, the homegrown, that does come with sometimes a higher price, but it's usually way more worth it, because these businesses are going to give you so much more attention and so much more personalization than you could ever find somewhere like Target. And so it's also super environmentally friendly, which is important right now when we support small businesses, because we cut down on transportation costs and shipping costs and things like that, and materials. So it's relevant, right? It's all relevant. But let me talk to you just a little bit more about my collaborative specifically, and how that got rolling. So in August of last year, so we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, as I mentioned, I kind of thought to myself, what could I be doing to bring together people to work together and really set up a platform for people? And I really had to stop and think about it for a while. And there's no wrong way to put a collaborative together, but for me, that started with talking with a wonderful organization we have here in Alexandria. It's part of the Small Business Development Center, and it's called Pop-Up ALX, which really their whole main focus is providing pop-up opportunities for businesses, or helping businesses think through these things. So I met with them and really considered some of the options that were available here in the city. And what I thought it was going to be, you know, it really had to evolve past that once I had some of these meetings. And then it became, where am I going to hold this? And I don't know where our audience members are from, but we have this amazing brewery here in Alexandria. So I'm going to give a huge shout out to Port City Brewery. And they're a huge champion of anything Alexandria, local, things like that. And so I just kind of sent them an email and said, what would you think about partnering on an event like this? And at the time, didn't really have a strong concept, didn't have a group of people. I just said, what do you think? And they said, yeah. So we were on a roll. And I give them a lot of credit for taking a chance with me for hosting this event. And it was a very good partnership. Like I said, they're amazing makers themselves. They understand this concept of just what it takes to put something like that out there. And so we had this holiday event back in November. We had 4,000 people attend. It was a little bit bananas. And we had 25 makers there, and they're in a variety of you know, products and businesses. It was amazing. It was really a celebration of the creativity that we can find right here in this city. And so that's kind of how I got started. If you are trying to start your own, I'm going to say look at maybe some of the local business associations, because obviously the people that are already a part of that want to work together, or at least are interested in how that can elevate one another. And you're going to find people that are relevant to what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same. And just because you are starting a group, there doesn't need to be competition. And I think there are some misconceptions that just because, for example, let's say we have a few different jewelry makers that join us, well, some are 3D printing their jewelry, and some are hand pressing like leather. And so we all have our own space, right? And so if we come together collectively, I think it's just going to amplify, as I've mentioned. So I would definitely suggest, if this is something you're interested in, start with who you know. and reach out to those business associations, like I said, and then really leverage social media because it's so powerful. That's actually how Ali and I connected. Was she simply just gave a shout out to her podcast and just said, hey guys, there's this event going on, you should check it out. And from there, it really kind of, it was snowballed from there. And I'm so glad it did, you know, and she's not the only example that I have of that. I can think of other collaborations. There is a jewelry designer here at Alexandria. She and I collaborated on t-shirt design, and that was, you know, something that she was kind of interested in. So I thought that was cool. But you will find these more and more throughout your area. There are really good shops here. There's Shop Made in DC, which is now on its, I think, 3rd store in the city. They are collaborative. They bring makers from the DMV area together. In Baltimore, there's the Charm City Craft Mafia, which I love. And then here, I'm just trying to do something similar here in Alexandria. But there are other companies as well. If you are, this is a good example of a bigger business helping a smaller business. West Elm, and I think this goes for most West Elms, the one here in Alexandria, the one in DC, they invite small businesses, home-based businesses, to come and have a little pop-up at their store on the weekends. And some might say, why would a t-shirt company go and pop up at West Elm? That doesn't make a ton of sense, but you know, I'm not competing directly with their customers. It's not like I went and popped up and trying to sell sofas. And it's just a way for them to say, hey, like, look, I'm bringing in these local people. You should stop by the store today. Today's a good day for you to come and shop West Elm. And so I strongly encourage bigger businesses that have that capacity to reach out to your community and say, we would love for you to come and just, you know, spend an afternoon with us. It probably will not hurt your business at all. And it just is a draw to bring a crowd. And so that's how it all got started. And I'm just so thankful for the collaborations that happened throughout the city. But then COVID hit, right? And then dun, dun, dun. And this is where Ali and I are going to focus more about, like, how do we pivot? And I'm sure that term has been used so much. I've heard it in the other presentations that I was in, but it really does. As a maker, you have to stop and think, what do I do now? Especially if you're doing something, for example, me, people don't need t-shirts. They don't need hyper local t-shirts as much as I would like them to think that. So at first, I think a lot of the makers just said, what can I do to contribute to the conversation? Right. And I'll shout out 2 really good examples. One is one called Artisan Matchmaker. They are actually a wedding planner, stationer, personalization company here in Old Town. And they took their machinery and started making PPE, which was a really interesting pivot, nothing to do with what they had originally been doing, but they saw a need and they started filling it. And another is Talusa, who is an amazing artist, and she block prints, and a lot of the things that she works with are fabric and that she prints herself. And so that was an easy switch for her to start sewing masks, but nobody would have thought a few months ago that that's what she would be printing her artwork on. And she's made thousands, and to the point where she's become so overwhelmed with orders that she's started to employ people to come and help her create the mask part. And so this has actually been a huge benefit to some of those people that maybe their work is not super guaranteed right now, or whatever it might be. So we now have these small businesses who have turned on a dime and have figured out very creative ways to continue to keep the people that are on their payroll and to continue to benefit the community in a very positive way. I have no personal example for myself, I will be honest, with the exception of the Makers Market. And so then that really started, my thought was, how do I continue to let people know that these makers are still out there hustling and making, and sometimes they're doing it because of the conditions, and sometimes they're doing it despite the conditions that are happening, right? It can be very therapeutic for them to continue with this work. And so I just don't think they have the opportunities. My schedule was cleared. I mean, I don't have another pop-up on the radar for essentially the entire year, with the exception of one that Makers Market is putting on next month. So we did do a virtual event. We partnered again with Port City because they were such a great partner the first time around. And essentially we set up a drop-off at their brewery so people could place order for these small businesses who don't have storefronts and then pick them up at the brewery. And we're so thankful that they allowed us to do that. Hopefully it brought them a little extra business. We certainly want them to benefit from there as well. It needs to be a symbiotic relationship. But in the end, you know, it was at least another way for people to be introduced to brands that they were not aware of. It was a way for these brands to realize that people were still interested in what they were putting together. It just, they hadn't been aware of it. And so it was a good event. I can't say it was overwhelming like the November one, but we're still really thankful that it happened. And then our upcoming one, our workshop week, is what I'm really, really excited about, because again, we have to think what is responsible, what is appropriate to have during this time period. And what I put together was renting out a studio that kind of specializes in a pop-up space, and they have companies in and out of there. It's called the Seedling Collective. Their idea is that it would be somewhere that people could kind of nurture an idea that they have, try it out for a week, a month, maybe a few months, but then decide, I do want a storefront or a workshop space or what it might be. So I've taken that over for the first week of August, and we're going to have part retail and workshops. This again leans back into my, sorry, we're just gonna, hi guys, for those that are just joining, I'm just gonna keep rolling. Thanks guys for catching up with us. This leans into my teaching experience and passion. And again, this desire to share what we are doing with a larger audience. Now, some might say, why as a maker would I share that? Why would I give away trade secrets or whatever it might be? But here's what's gonna happen. I don't think that anybody is going to go away with a secret formula and start doing what you do. I think what they're going to do is recognize you are an expert in this field and you are a trusted voice, so that when they are in the market for XYZ, you know, they're going to turn to you because they remember this experience of your workshop and your leadership, and you're the obvious choice. You are who they are going to turn to. And so that's why I think these workshops are really so vital for small businesses and makers to engage in. And then the retail side, of course, we want to show off the products that we're making, right? And some people, they want to be hands off. Great, come and buy our products. That's, you know, we would love that. But I'm just really excited about the education piece of this event. And I think we've put together a really eclectic mix, and I was very considerate about what we call a maker. And so we have things that you would consider traditional and hands-on, like paper crafting. But then we also have Allie's intro to podcasting and things like that, which again, we're expanding our horizon. And I think what's going to happen is people are going to start to realize, A, how many creatives we do have in this city, B, how we can start to work together, right? Because it's not just about us to the customer. It's really about how can I bring these makers together and what can we do to maybe elevate each other, right? We're not competing, we are elevating one another. And then there's the huge community benefit as well. Like I said, most of us are very small businesses. And so this gives us a storefront, this gives us a space for the community to come check us out in a more personal setting. And of course, it's COVID. So we have to be super careful, but I think that it's everything, at least in this neck of the woods, is opening up. And so it shouldn't be, as long as we are distanced and masked up and disinfecting, I think that we should be okay. But it provides a really fun opportunity for people to just get out of the house in a different way that, you know, they've been inside for 6 months now at this point. Oh my goodness, like that is just a terribly long time. So here is a way for kids and adults to get out of the house in a what we are trying to be is the ultimately safe way possible. We also do have virtual events. And so if people are not in the area or really not comfortable, which is okay, then we can offer that as well. And we're just, showing you something new that you can spend your time doing, because I think we're still going to be at home for a little while longer. And so we might as well be productive with our time. Now, that can be on a personal level or a professional level. And at least for me, for these two businesses, my t-shirt brand and then this collective, it's a time that I've really started to think, if this pandemic continues, how do I continue to grow? I based my business models on normal life, on pre-pandemic life. And those don't apply right now. And I don't know how long. We thought it was just going to be a month, maybe 2. Well, we're 6 months in, and like, we're at a point where we need to think longer term. And now we have to really start to revamp what our life is going to look like as a small business owner, as a maker. And Allie has some really, really solid ways that we can do this and do it in a virtual, technological way. And so I'm just going to turn the floor over to her. And I appreciate you guys letting me rave on for all this time. So Allie, take it away, my friend.
All right, thank you. Before I start to talk, with folks that are attending, are any of you small business owners or creatives yourselves? Give us a yes in the chat if you are, and if so, let us know. What is your business about, or if you're a maker, what are you making? I'm interested to kind of learn more about who we have in attendance today. So feel free to utilize the group chat. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my history and my journey through my business, and then I'm going to jump into how you can really start utilizing social media in a variety of ways, and use a variety of social media platforms, as well as some other tools that as a small business or a creative, you can really start to utilize to build your online presence and start, to continue to be successful in your business during the time of COVID. And as Elisa mentioned, a lot of creatives and small businesses alike have had to start pivoting. And one example of that for me personally was my podcast is all about getting out there and trying new things and going to events and hanging out with your friends. And so when COVID hit, I honestly thought about just stopping the podcast, because I thought, in 2-3 months, it'll be over, and then I can start, season 2 and start fresh, and it'll all be good. That gives me 3 months of prep time, which is amazing. Who can't use 3 months of prep time, right? But I'm actually in a lot of creative groups on social media, and I kind of pitched the idea to them because they're also podcasters, and a lot of them encouraged me to keep going and to push myself to find new ways to do my podcast through virtual events. And that was something I hadn't really considered. And so that kind of opened up a whole new aspect of my podcast, which was, what are some of the virtual events that various museums are putting on, or virtual concerts? And, I'd get groups of, you can do virtual vacations now through travel companies for a very reasonable price. And so I started looking into that and doing more of those. And so kind of the latter half of my season 1 for the podcast really focused on virtual entertainment. So an example of that is I did a tour of the Winchester Mystery House, something that I don't know if I'll ever be able to do in person, but it was amazing to take a virtual tour of it, and enjoyed it so much, and I actually connected with a lot of people who had been there in person and shared their own stories about the Winchester Mystery House, all through this virtual 45-minute tour that I took. So that's kind of an example of how I personally had to pivot with COVID-19 and how it impacted my podcast. But it honestly, I think, kind of forced me to be a little more creative and branch out more. So I was really thankful for the creative community that I'm in, to have them kind of push me and encourage me to continue to go, because otherwise I would have taken a 3-month break. So
what's the name of your podcast?
My podcast is the Fun with Friends podcast.
Can you put a little note so we can check it out at some point?
Most definitely.
Love it.
I'll also drop a link in there towards the end, but it's available on Google, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, the usual places.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you. I guess while I'm talking about the podcast, part of the Makers Market workshop week, Elisa is putting on August 3rd through 7th. I am leading a podcast workshop. So it's about starting a podcast on a budget, because that's, again, what I'm really about is encouraging people to be creative and to really not let funding be a factor. So you can literally start a podcast with a phone and you'll be fine. So
Yeah.
My workshop is all about starting podcasts on a budget. And I've put together some fancy little workshop worksheets and guides on how you can start your podcast for literally no money. I spent $12 to start mine for like a lapel mic, and that's how I podcast right now. And I get a little bit more into how to market yourself and various platforms that are out there that are free that you can use to start your podcast and create all your social media postings and all of that. So I get into that a little more in depth in a couple of weeks during that workshop week. So I'm going to backtrack a little to the beginning of my journey. So buckle up, we're going down memory lane. So I have always wanted to have my own business. I think for as long as I can remember, it's definitely been something I've wanted to do. And I've really started off with photography. I think I have always been taking photos. It was something I really enjoyed doing. I like the idea of being able to kind of freeze moments and freeze those memories in time, and you have them with you always. And I really love photography for that reason. And so I started my photography business, Faire Photography, about 7 or 8 years ago, and really focused on family portraits and headshots and making them, again, affordable for individuals, kind of a sliding scale type of photography, because I'm a big advocate that everyone should be able to have those memories captured. And again, money isn't everything. So if I have a memory from when I was graduating from high school, where my mother had to spend thousands of dollars for my high school headshots, and it had to borrow that money. And so I don't want other families to have to kind of like go through that situation. So I'm really focused on how I can make these services affordable to families, small businesses, etc. So headshots for like stand-up comedians, that was really a focus when I first got it started. There were a lot of stand-up comedians that needed headshots.
The DC area is full of stand-up comedians. No one ever thinks that that's the case, but it's true.
I was very surprised. And then I also did a lot of volunteering with local organizations that needed photographers for events that they were holding, because a lot of times they're holding these events for free. And so I would offer my photography services because it's a great way to, help the community. And so I really enjoyed doing that. And, I've been doing photography ever since. I haven't been able to really focus on it full time because I've got the normal, office 9-to-5 type of job. And I've just been picking up photography jobs kind of here and there, and pretty much for like almost the last decade. And I've always done a little bit of, again, freelance writing and kind of sketching and illustration. But it wasn't really until last year when I started really considering quitting my 9-to-5 and going full-time creative and starting my own business. And the reason for that, which I feel like a lot of people can really relate to, is I was feeling just really run down, like burned out. I was working a job where I was traveling a lot. It was a very high stress type of job, doing disaster recovery type work. And I just really needed to get out of there, try something new. So I actually took a month and a half off from my work, which I was lucky enough to be able to do that, and really focused on myself and really thought about where I wanted to go with my life and what I was interested in and what I was passionate about. And it was during that time that I decided I needed to quit my job of 7 years, find a new job that let me be a little more creative and kind of allowed me to be in the DC area more often so I could actually focus on building my business. And so I did it. I like to say I took that time and I decided to start building my empire, as I say. So I also decided that was when I started my podcast. I was sitting and I was like, I'm going to start a podcast and it's going to be about doing all of the things I've always wanted to do that I've been telling myself I can't do. And so I did that too. I went out and I got a book about starting a podcast to use as kind of like a manual and asked my friends if they would be down to be guests on it and went to work. And I really saw it as an opportunity to rediscover Alexandria and DC because I've been gone so much. I've been here for 4 years now and I feel like I'm still finding something new every day. And so this was my way to really start connecting back with Alexandria and DC and the communities here. And it was also a way to reconnect with my friends because I was traveling so much. I wasn't hanging out with them as much. So the podcast was really a way to get back into all of that. And through my podcast, what I'm finding, especially now during COVID-19, is that people are really looking to connect. I've had high school students reach out to my podcast page because they're starting their own podcast because it's a way for them to still be with their friends and connect with their friends and still be social but apart. And I can't encourage that enough. I think it's a great way for them to do that. And again, you can virtually explore museums together. I mean, there's tons of stuff you can do virtually now. And, I'm always ready to kind of take that on and encourage anyone who wants to start a podcast because I do think it is very important now, given the current way that we all have to live, given COVID. And I personally have found through the podcast that I have learned to communicate better. My confidence has grown. I feel like my conversation skills have grown because I have an interview podcast and an interview format or style of podcast. And it's really kind of encouraged me to be more confident and to grow in my speaking abilities. I used to almost like black out from anxiety just at the idea of having to speak publicly. So like if Elisa had asked me to do this panel last year, I honestly probably would have said no, just from nerves and my fear of having to speak to people. But my podcast, along with the support that I'm getting from other podcasters and the various creative communities that I'm in, has really helped me to grow. And which is why I'm encouraging anytime someone reaches out to me, no matter how old they are, but especially with high schoolers, if you want to start a podcast, definitely do it. Part of the workshop that I'm leading on podcasting is to provide people with a free 30-minute mentorship on starting a podcast. So if they have questions or need advice, or if they already have a podcast and they want me to check it out and give feedback, like that's something I'm willing to do because again, I strongly believe in podcasting. And right now it's blowing up. I think more people are listening to podcasts now than they were before. You can't go to the movies, so listen to something on your phone instead. And so with Coots Creations, I'm actually looking to go full-time creative next month, hopefully, if everything goes to plan. So I'm very excited, but also extremely terrified, which I'm sure a lot of small business owners and makers can relate to. But one of the things that I've taken away really from this whole process has been that and I find it very comforting, is that there is a massive amount of creatives out there that are willing to help you learn and grow. And so I've really been able to plug into those groups. And it's kind of what Elisa said, is that it shouldn't be about the competition. It should really be about how can we raise each other up and how can we support each other. And I'm really finding through social media, you can do that. You can connect with so many people. And we're living in a time of social media and podcasts right now because of COVID. And a lot of businesses and people are starting to use social media more. And I just heard today, Twitter has seen a massive increase in users and screen time in the last week or recently, and it's been more than they've seen before. So I feel like that's proof that we really need to start utilizing social media platforms to continue to grow and be successful during this time. And you know, I just want to say, it doesn't matter if you're like 20 or 60, right? Like, get on social media, find a platform that works for you, works for that your customers are on, works for your niche, and learn how to use it to the best that you can, because it will do wonders for your business. And that's something that I assist with as part of the education part of Coots Creations. It's helping you with your branding and your marketing and social media management. So again, I'm not only doing that for you, but I'm teaching you how to use those things for yourself so that you can do it yourself and you won't have to spend funds on someone else. And I know we're coming close to time, so I'm gonna hurry. But you know, customers, it's all about building trust with your customers. So people like to learn about who you are, what you do, what your story is, see behind the scenes, and you can really do all of that through social media. So you know, you can do it through podcasting, you can do it through videos. If you don't want to start your own podcast, there are millions of podcasts out there. Start sending inquiries to various podcasts and asking if you can be on their show. I get inquiries probably 2 to 3 a week from small businesses asking if they can be on my show. And I'm always willing to say yes, because I would want someone to do that to help me out. Another example of using social media is Twitter is the place to be if you're a podcaster. I'm in several creative communities on Twitter, and I work with over 100 other podcasters daily. So that's over 100 people sharing my content every day and driving traffic to my podcast and vice versa. So it's really a great way to connect with other podcasters. We share tips, we grow as that community, and we're starting to do that on Instagram now too. With Coots Creations, we have a small business creative community that we're building there, where we're, again, tips on what we can do to grow as a group together. Another example, Patreon. Creating a Patreon for your small business can be extremely helpful. If you have a good following on social media, consider this, because essentially your customers can pay for access to special content. So if you're filming behind the scenes videos, maybe that's something that you put on your Patreon, and you have different tiers. So tier 1, your customers get a free sticker every month and access to the videos. Tier 2, they get 2 free stickers and a t-shirt and access to your videos. Or, you can build on it from there. So you can have different tiers at different prices. And, or, you can also do membership boxes if you are looking to kind of send out goodies to your members. So that have them sign up for a monthly box where you send out promo materials and maybe keychains and whatever you're making, just little kind of treats to thank them for being members in your group. So there's really a huge variety of things that you can do as a creator to get yourself out there. But the number one thing I can really say is just social media is where it's at right now. TikTok is, again, TikTok's a little right? It may or may not stay around, but you got to find your people. You got to weed through a little bit on any type of social media, right? Find your people, find your group, find your tribe, whatever you want to say. And if you can't find them, start your own, because there are people out there that are doing the same things, and they're probably having the same problems and have the same questions that you have. So start your own group and build it. And with TikTok, there are so many small businesses on there that are doing amazing things. They're showing videos of their products, showing videos of how they make things, how they mail things. Like, it's insane. And some of these videos are getting 50,000 likes. That's 50,000 potential customers that could be going to your shop. So I'd say TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram are really good social media platforms to be using right now. And yeah, so I think I'm going to stop there. So I kind of threw a lot out there fast, but I do want to say I'm always interested in helping out and helping small businesses. So I will put my contact information in the chat along with links to my businesses and social media pages. And definitely, if you're interested in learning more about social media marketing or management and how you can utilize various free resources to build your social media presence, definitely reach out to me. I would love to help you. And if you're around August 3rd through the 7th, stop by the workshop week. It's pretty amazing. It'll be great. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Elisa.
Thank you so much, Allie. I don't know if anybody else is having internet issues. I am sweating over here trying to get back on, but we're here. So I'm glad you're with me.
Oh, it looked great to me. It looked great.
Thank you. You know, good thing this is happening virtually, but so for you guys, hopefully you had a seamless experience with Allie, but I'm here, I'm back. That's all. But I do want to just highlight one of the things she said, you know, find your tribe. And again, that does not need to be, I don't need to go and find more t-shirt makers, although I could, but I should go and find more small businesses, people that are going through the same situations that I'm going through, that are struggling and trying to figure out creative solutions. And then I'm really going to encourage you to think about how can we work together to elevate each other. And I'm going to continue to push that message that we can collaborate. We don't have to compete, that when we come together, that we're really going to, that's how we're going to continue forward into the future. And Allie gave some really solid advice and things that I had not thought about. She's certainly the expert with the podcast. I think it's an interesting way. I think even a blog is as kind of old school as that might be, you know, that's really something that adds value. And this Patreon situation is kind of an interesting, like, a lot of maker spaces could really engage, I think, with the Patreon in ways that would be very creative. So I'm going to encourage you guys to go and check that out as well.
You know, I was going to say Medium is really great for two things. Even if it doesn't get a ton of traffic, it's like it becomes an archive of something you did, and right, because if it's not on the internet, it never existed, I guess, right? But like, if you put it up there and someone's looking for something about makers and sales and Alexandria, if that exists on the internet and they've got a refined search, they will find you and they'll come looking for you. And what's also super cool about Medium that no one uses is you can use it like a photo gallery. You can literally just put beautiful photos and it becomes this cool photo like stream, and you can share that. It looks really cool.
I think you're so right. I think that all these things, and they might be overwhelming to engage in all of them, but it increases our SEO, right? And so you're right. If you put that Google in, the more places that we are located, the easier people are going to find us. So it might be mentally easy to just kind of put it into like, okay, I can handle Facebook. That's where I'm at. But I'm going to encourage you to, that's when you reach out to another small business that's next door, or another maker that you know, or whatever, and say, I need help. This is, you know, how do I engage with this? Let me get the ball rolling. So, and Allie certainly is a excellent person on the technical side of things. I am happy to do it from a community side of things. And I'll just say, this is how I do it. For my example with the brewery, I just ask. That's it. There's nothing, there's no magic there. I just simply say, would you be interested in working with me on XYZ project? And that's exactly what I did with Allie, and that's what I've done with everybody. rarely are people going to say no to you, because that's an opportunity for them. And if it's not a good fit, that's okay too. Like maybe there'll be a time in the future when everybody can come together. But yeah, for what it's worth, just put yourself out there, because worst they can say is no. So yeah, so let's open it up. Let's see if there are any questions, either through the chat or.
I've been engaging the whole time. I don't have any other specific questions. I believe in leaving the camera on if you can.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad.
So I missed the beginning. I want to ask just really quickly, like, so this is a market that's been going on this year during COVID. You're taking your precautions. That's the idea?
Yes, definitely. So I am actually, I don't have a storefront. I am a pop-up collaborative. And
yeah.
We just kind of show up, and we do it in different avenues in different ways. The next event is going to be the beginning of August. And there is a company, if you're in the Alexandria, DC area, called the Seedling Collective. It's just a studio space that businesses kind of starting up can try out their concept. And so it's going to be great. We're going to have retail space, and then we're also going to have nice big tables, one person on each side,
yeah,
where we can do workshops, very small. There's only 6 seats available for each workshop, so that we can keep people as distant as possible. And then also some of the workshops will be streamed, so they will be available virtually. And yes, the idea is safety is certainly the #1 precaution.
Yeah.
I do not want to be responsible for any sort of.
Yeah, no, nobody did. And, and has the city been supportive of you working on this stuff? I don't,
They really are. I will give a shout out to the city of Alexandria. They are very supportive of their small businesses, but that is one thing that they really push for, because that's a tourist attraction for them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I heard some statistic that the small business here in town, tax-wise, bring in more than like our 3 biggest grocery store chains. I mean, they're making their money from the small businesses, so they do a lot to support us, which I really appreciate. And
I'm checking you out, right? I'm checking out the website right now. It looks great, right? Like, I will say it's hard for me. I'm trying not to leave DC or much even my house during COVID. It's really rough, but these are exactly the kind of things I love. If in a different situation, I would probably come, and I still might as I get more comfortable, right? That's the point.
And it is definitely a comfort level, and I definitely understand where people are just not there yet. And so we were trying to find a balance. Like, things are opening back up, and people might be kind of wandering out of the house, or just really like, I have to get out of the house right now. And we're providing something that hopefully is safe and structured, and a good way to spend some time. But
so I was gonna say, so I'm surprised to see, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, this being put together without sort of the foundation, right? Like I was on the board for a little bit over at Nova Labs. They're great. They're really wonderful. And they were putting together sort of a storefront for the Christmas season. But there's that like institutional support and like base of makers. And so who is the base of where all this all came together? Was it just like an idea? Hey, I'm going to do this. And then you just got people excited and then you did it? Because that's great. I mean, I'm always supportive of it. It just sounds hard. It sounds hard.
Yes. Yeah. No, I also own another brand. And so through that local brand, I was meeting local makers, and I realized that we really needed a platform here in the city. And we have some really good events, but those highlight people and draw people from all over. And I really wanted to focus here on Alexandrian-based makers, similar to Shop Made in DC or the Be More Creatives, which is in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so
I remember the whole like beginnings of Shop Made in DC. I mean, because I worked with them to help them out. Like Morgan and Raj kind of started the Made in DC kind of brand name, and then it turned into the Shop Made in DC, which is really great. I mean, do you have hope to turn to, in addition to, because the Shop Made in DC does a few things, right? They have a couple of shops, and there was like private/public investors in it, and the public pulled out intentionally. It was like a transition out, while also having like holiday markets, which is kind of the bread and butter of these things. Like that's where they make their most, my assumption. I don't really know.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that was my initial concept when I approached the city. It was going to actually just be a holiday pop-up for about a month, and I had a space down in Old Town that was going to work. And to be honest, it was just a little overwhelming at that time. And I think what has happened in this last year, if we did not have COVID, that's what it would have become. That's not something I'm going to go for this round, this holiday season. We'll just have to see where this pandemic goes.
Yeah.
But yes, that is exactly what it was going to be. And then I actually kind of love this pandemic because it's really made me think, how can we do this differently? And how can we still elevate each other and collaborate with one another and do it in a way that is non-traditional, right? Because those traditional ways sometimes are the easy route, and having to do this in a brand new way allows us and allows me to make it what I want it to be, right? I get to really just build it from the ground up, and that's what we're going to do. And so we tried the pop-up, we tried the virtual event. Now we're doing a week-long, with workshops, which is really where my heart and passion are. And so then I have an idea spinning for what our holiday season will look like, but it's not going to be in person. So this will continue to evolve and grow, certainly with the times. But could you potentially see a storefront in the future? Yes. It's not going to be probably within the next year, as we shake this out. But
my dream has always been, so my name's Yuri. I help run the Congressional Maker Caucus, and one of the big things we always talk about is small batch mixed manufacturing. The dream scenario, I think, that the federal government could assist, but it would be better if it did it on its own, is just this kind of idea that we revitalized underutilized downtowns across the country with kind of mixed manufacturing, small batch mixed manufacturing, where it's rental space essentially, right? But in there, you also have communal maker space for memberships, as well as retail and event space, right? Because the beauty of that is when you start a retail shop in a downtown that isn't used, no one goes there. There's no foot traffic, right? You have to have a grouping. But if you have this kind of mixed manufacturing in maker sales, like you do some sales in the retail, but really your main sales are online and business to business. And so, but you attract people with this like local brand. So it's new foot traffic. You attract people with the events, right? But that's a lot of space and that's a big investment. And you really have to get government involved if you're going to do it in a place like in the underutilized downtown, and not, rather than just looking for venture capital, is not going to want to invest in something like that.
Yeah, no, it is that, and that's where I hit the brakes. It just became a little too big. And so, but now it is growing. Certainly the name is growing, and I think we're gathering more makers and drawing more people in. And so there's a base of probably about 50 makers here in Alexandria that have participated in an event in some way or are aware of us, so that for future events, I'm not literally trying to find people on social media and say, hey, you should be involved in this. It's now we know exactly who these makers are.
Are you going to do like a made in Alexandria branding at some point, or a made in Northern Virginia kind of thing?
Well, so that's my t-shirt. That's where this started. I do have a hyper-local Alexandria-based t-shirt brand. And so I'll leave that to that side of things. There is certainly some crossover that could potentially happen.
But like DC has its program, right? And so if you register with Made in DC, you get the advantages of being able to sell in the store using the communal branding. You have to have meet a certain threshold of being produced in Washington, DC. Not all of it. You have to hire a certain amount of people. But the idea was that there's just an advantage to being part of this conglomerate and the brand that goes along with it.
There is. It's just strength in numbers, and Shop Made in DC has done an excellent job, and they've grown very well. And
they've had hiccups along the way too. Everybody does.
Certainly. No, absolutely. But and there is something and there, you know, we hit upon this a little bit more about shopping local and what that really does to impact the communities and why it's just more important than ever. So,
and the pride it gives to communities. It's not just the tax revenue. It's the pride of, you know, my hometown, the city I live in produces this X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. So there are just so many reasons why we need to be we're going to need to support everybody, certainly all the mom and pop shops, all the restaurants. These are the people that are hustling and deserve our attention. So hopefully you continue to see my Makers Market elevate those voices. That's what I'm attempting to do. And, you know, if you're joining us and, you know, the ways that you can to really support these small businesses, no matter in what sector, is really just continue to share them on social media, whatever platforms that you're on. And that word of mouth, those recommendations, they are so important. They're critical for the businesses to grow organically. And so that's how, you know, a consumer can do their part without paying anything. That doesn't cost you anything but a moment of your time. So I'll encourage people to continue to do that. You know, we have takeout on the way, you know, and just cheesy as it is, you know, you throw that on social media and say like, we really appreciate that. You know, that's how we move forward through this pandemic together as a community.
Yeah.
So, any other questions? You guys are so great. Thank you so much for sticking with us, and Allie for being such a rock star and joining me for this. And I hope that you've learned something along the way. If there's any questions, you guys are certainly welcome to reach out to either of us. I know that we both welcome it, because obviously that's why we're trying to work together and raise everybody up. So you can check out our website. It is www.alexandria-makersmarket.com. Also, of course, on Instagram at alexandria-makersmarket.com. I have to plug that, of course. And we do have some of these workshops coming up. So grab a ticket. They are, Michelle, thank you. That was a kind comment. And some of them are virtual. So no matter where you are, you can join us. And we really appreciate you guys being here for this hour. It's Friday. Go and enjoy your afternoon, evening.
Have a great one.
Thank you
Thanks,
all so
everybody.
much.
Thank you, guys.